Joining us tonight for what we believe will be a very interesting discussion. My name is Mike Kuckelman. I'm chairman of the Kansas Republican Party. We have a great group with us tonight. Our panelists um, include Representative Patrick Penn. Uh, Representative Penn overcame lots of hardships as a child growing up and has become quite a successful person serving our country and now serving our state. Uh, Representative Penn was in the United States Army after he graduated high school. He served admirably in the war on terror in Iraq and Afghanistan. He engaged in multiple tours of duty, including Operation Iraqi Freedom, Operation Enduring Freedom, and Operation Inherent Resolve. He is a highly decorated veteran. He received the Joint Service Commendation Medal, the Meritorious Service Medal, and the Combat Action Badge before he honorably retired at the rank of captain in 2017. While serving our country, Representative Penn graduated from Colorado State University with a degree in criminology and sociology and earned his Master's of Science degree in Applied Information Technology from George Mason University School of Engineering. Continuing with his commitment to our nation, he put in 20 years service and education to work for Textron Aviation in Wichita as a program manager. In 2020, Representative Penn won the nomination for the Republican candidate for District 85 seat. And then he went on in November, as you know, to win that seat and keep it in Republican hands. Today, Representative Penn serves constituents of the 85th District and the people of Kansas in Topeka. He is honored to serve on the federal and state affairs, children and seniors, and K through 12 education budget. Patrick Penn is a Sunday school teacher and volunteer at Central Christian Church. He is committed to traditional Kansas values, and he has been married to his wife for over 11 years. They reside in Northeast Wichita, where they raise 4 children. Representative Penn, welcome to our panel tonight. We also have a friend of everyone in the Republican Party, Treatha Brown-Foster. Treatha, welcome to our panel tonight. Treatha retired after more than 25 years service in the financial services industry as a bank examiner, and she's now very active in the community and very active in our party. She was a duly elected as one of the 6 Kansas presidential electors of the Electoral College for the office of President of the United States. She was one of the 6 electoral votes for President Trump. She has served on the Sedgwick County Mental Health Advisory Board after being appointed by the Sedgwick County Board of Commissioners. And she organized and chaired the Community Unity Action Group in support of law enforcement. And Treatha has also served on the board of directors for the Wichita Library. She also chaired the Ashley Brown Sickle Cell Anemia Scholarship Fund. The mission of the fund is to provide assistance and scholarships to Kansas students who suffer from sickle cell anemia. In the past, she proudly served as City Council District 1 coordinator for the Pure and Simple Abstinence Education. Treatha continues to advocate for safer neighborhoods, better schools, and other communities. Welcome, Treatha, to the panel tonight. And we also have Rashard Young, impressive candidate in the House District. He had quite a close race. He was born in Kansas City, Missouri, and he's been a resident of Kansas for the last decade. Rashard was a scholar athlete. He received a degree in liberal arts from Johnson County Community College, where he was a member of the basketball, track, and field teams. Rashard then transferred to Mid-America Nazarene, where he earned his bachelor's degree in criminal justice with an emphasis in legal studies. During his time at Mid-America Nazarene, Rashard honed his research and writing skills as an intern for the Franklin County Prosecutor's Office. He spent much of his time researching solutions for prison reform at both the state and federal level. Recently, as you probably know, Rashard was a candidate for State House Representative for District 16, located in the heart of Johnson County. He currently serves as Consumer Outreach Director for Attorney General Derek Schmidt. He is also the founder of Bison Consulting, which works to connect urban schools to resources normally not accessible. Prior to focusing his career on government and politics, Rashard worked in as a financial investment advisor for Northwest Mutual, where he was part of the top 5% of financial advisors in the country. Rashard developed an ability to serve diverse groups and clients. Drawing on his degree and his connection to people from all different backgrounds, he made the transition into the campaign world, and he served as outreach coordinator for former Congressman Kevin Yoder. In this capacity, he oversaw and trained 150 volunteers and assisted numerous Kansas legislators in contested races. In his free time, Rashard mentors local high school students, and he's an active member in his church. Rashard enjoys duck hunting and reading. Welcome, Rashard Young. And with that, I think that we're ready to kick off. Shannon, do we have everybody ready to go? I think.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
There you are. Yes. Okay,
fantastic. Good evening, everyone, and thank you to Chairman Kuckelman for that very warm and gracious introduction. It is always very strange hearing pleasant words said of yourself, especially when working in the State House. We do some pitched battles up here, so this is always a welcome relief. I just want to welcome everyone here tonight to the panel. Hopefully we have a very good conversation. We have some things in store that we want to discuss tonight with our distinguished panel members. And if I may, sir, is Kenya Cox online as well? I saw in the chat where someone had welcomed her.
I should have mentioned that actually there was a scheduling issue. She cannot join us now tonight. She sends her regrets.
Okay, fantastic. Well, again, welcome everyone to the Kansas GOP Black History Month panel. I am Patrick Penn, State Representative from House 85th District, as you heard, and I'll be joined tonight by some esteemed guests, both Mr. Rashard Young as well as Treatha Brown-Foster, to discuss a few of the things and hopefully have a very professional, powerful, impactful, and purposeful panel here tonight while we discuss not only where we've been in Kansas, but where we're going as it relates to our Black GOP future. That said, Ms. Treatha, are you on? Can you hear us very well over there?
But if she's there, she'll speak up, but she may be having trouble with the technology.
Too easy. I wanted to lead off with Ms. Treatha Brown-Foster. She has been a pillar in the community and in the state as it pertains to understanding and living out a lot of the history of the Black Republicans here in Kansas. So I wanted to give the floor over to her so that she could hit on the historical context and get everybody on the same sheet of music right there. Good evening, Ms. Treatha. How are you?
Fine. How are you, Representative Penn?
Very well, madam.
First of all, I would like to thank Chairman Mike Kuckelman and our Executive Director, Shannon Golden,
Absolutely.
for putting on in celebration for Black History Month. In addition, I'd like to thank Chairman Kuckelman for selecting me as one of the 6 Kansas presidential electors of the Electoral College for the office of President of the United States. I was honored, very honored. Black History Month began, as Negro History Week, which was created by Carter G. Woodson, a noted African-American historian, scholar, educator, and publisher. It became a month-long celebration in 1976. The month of February was chosen because it was with the birthdays of Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass. So that's some insight that we probably didn't know, which would be good to know. Black History Month is a time of rejoicing, celebrating, thanking those African Americans for giving us hope or a life lesson that could be used. Black history is just about all the bad times. It's about integrity, leadership, and determination. Some of the ones that I know that as we look at overall Black history, I look at the first Black senator, Herman Rose Revels, which is the first African American that was elected to the U.S. Senate. He represented the state of Mississippi from February 1870, March 1972. Of course, now we have Senator Tim Scott. Rosa Parks, who sparked the Montgomery bus boycott in Montgomery, Alabama in 1955. And then, of course, our godfather, you might say, the civil rights movement, Martin Luther King. He was an African-American Baptist minister, an activist who became the most visible spokesman and leadership of the civil rights movement from 1955 until his assassination in 1968. At the age of 35, he was the youngest man to receive the Nobel Peace Prize and was named the Man of the Year by Time magazine in 1963, and became not only a symbolic leader of African American Black, but also a world figure. Now I want to kind of go back to Kansas. Kansas have a lot of Black history, which I am so proud that I am a Kansan. The Exodus movement from 1879 to 1881. Benjamin Pap Singleton, a former slave from Tennessee, encouraged Blacks to move to Kansas, where they would be able to purchase land and establish a better way of life. At the end of Reconstruction in 1876, caused a mass overflow of Black refugees from the Old South, fleeing violence and poverty. Many headed for Kansas, which was associated with freedom, Bleeding Kansas, and John Brown. Another landmark was Brown versus the Board of Education in 1954. The landmark United States Supreme Court case issued on May the 17th, 1954, unanimous 9-1, which held separate education facilities for inheriting unequal and thus racially segregated schools were a violation of the Constitution's Equal Protection Clause. The other one I want to kind of set, because out of all the Black cities after Reconstruction, Nicodemus, Kansas, founded in 1877, and is named after the biblical figure Nicodemus. Nicodemus was the first Black community west of the Mississippi River and the only predominantly Black community west of the Mississippi that remains a living community today. And all Black outposts on the frontier, this unsettled land offered a chance for Black farmers and families to start anew. And the other one, last but not least, the Dockham Drug Sit-In. Protests began July 19, 1958 and went to August 11, 1958. The Dockham Drug Store, located at the southeast corner of Douglas and Broadway in Wichita, Kansas, white-only lunch counter. The protesters would sit at the counter all day until the store closed, ignoring taunts from counter protesters. Sit-in ends 3 weeks later. The owner relented and agreed to serve Black patrons. So that is to give you kind of an output in the celebrations that we have, especially here in the state of Kansas. And one that I'm really proud of is where we, the Kansas Black Republican Council, which has 7 subsidiaries underneath them. I'm proud to say that Sedgwick County Black Republican Council is one of the subsidiaries, and I'm the one that organized that with the help of all of the Kansans, especially my good friend, Susan Estes. The Kansas Black Republican Council, I would kind of, if you would allow me, Representative Penn, I'd kind of like to read before we start in discussion, I'd kind of like to read our mission statement.
Oh, please do, madam.
If I may, please.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you.
Let me get to that. I got so many here. Mission statement. Okay. It's so important, and that's why I really wanted to read it. Can you see me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, there I am. The mission statement of the Kansas Black Republican Council is to attract more Black members into the Republican Party by addressing issues affecting the Black community, secure the election, the participation of Black Republicans at all levels of government, and support the principles and objectives of the Republican Party through education, communication, and motivation of the Black electorate. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Treatha. We appreciate that. That was phenomenal to go down and understand, the importance of Black history being nationally as well as all the way down into Kansas, even into the county level. To have someone that has that much information at the ready is a real treat for every one of our viewers that are here tonight. Before I go a step further, as a general housekeeping note, I know that you might be on a mute section right there, but there's a chat function on the Zoom. And if you have any questions or if you would like to chime in or anything like that, I am watching it over here on the side. So if you wanted to make any comment, even though your mic might be off, please utilize the chat function. And I will give you the recognition for any questions or comments that you have as we go through this. Our other distinguished guest that we have here tonight, as you heard Chairman Kuckelman mention, is a gentleman by the name of Rashard Young. Rashard, are you in there?
Did you have your,
can you hear me?
Mic on? Can you hear me all
Fantastic,
right?
I heard you. Yes, sir, there you are. Just a quick question. Did you have anything that you want to add on for the historical framework or reference for Black history to what Ms. Treatha was already bringing to the table?
Absolutely. Yeah, she kind of spoke on the rich history of, African Americans, not only here nationally, but in Kansas. Nationally, it takes me back to, Robert Small, who was one of the first Black members and longest serving members in Congress. His story is incredible, right? He was born into slavery, stole a Confederate ship, took his friends and family, said, let's go, there's a party up north.
Excuse me, Mr. Young. I think right now you're delving into some secret Black history. This is not taught in schools.
It's good stuff. I mean, they stole the Confederate ship. He took his friends and family, they went up north. He tricked Confederate soldiers through 4 checkpoints. And, just the story of overcoming, right? We talk about somebody that had odds. He was born into slavery. I sure wasn't born into slavery. What a privilege it was. And then you've got Greensville, Oklahoma. You've got Black Wall Street. There was Black lawyers, Black doctors, Black hospitals. It's just such an amazing thing to know then and now. African Americans have proven that we can thrive economically, socially, spiritually here in America. So the history is so rich. It's so much to it that, you may not have been taught growing up in elementary, middle school, and high school, but the more you learn, it makes you wonder and help you find your roots. So it's good stuff.
Amen. And it's very good that you all both have mentioned some of the historical references to Brown versus Board of Topeka here. And the mural that sits right here behind me, as a matter of fact, some of you may recognize it here at the Capitol. And I know that our other panelist tonight, Ms. Cox, was instrumental in getting this mural not only, and Ms. Treatha, would you like to speak to that, please?
Yes, Kenya got that mural, and it was all private funding, no public funding. And she, I think Kim Borcher, I think she helped her with getting some of a large amount of that funding. And the great thing about that, Representative Penn, was that our keynote speaker was our one and only Attorney General Derek Smith. He was our keynote speaker. And we made sure that all of us Republicans were sitting right up there at front. We had reserved seats right behind the Brown family. So that was really exciting. Yeah. And we did that. We had the private showing on May the 17th, the 16th or 17th. Kenya probably can, because I believe that is the date that that it was tried, May the 17th, 1954. And we had the private showing, I think in 2018, May the 17th, 2018. And Kenya probably be able to really verify it, but it was a great, very well received. And you're behind that famous mural that she got done as the chairman of Kansas African American, as the executive director of Kansas African American Affairs Commission.
And we're so appreciative of such iconic work being done and all of the labor that went into it. both from the private donors who had a hand in it. And also, and do forgive me, I am remiss. I've blown out my view here of who we have present tonight. And I was remiss in acknowledging we have the Kansas GOP treasurer, Mr. Bob Dool. Want to acknowledge him tonight, as well as Ms. Linda Baker, one of our precinct committee women. We also have committee woman for the RNC, Ms. Kim Borchers, that you were just referencing. She's on here tonight. And past committee woman, Ms. Helen Van Adden, is with us tonight as well. And if there's anyone else that I'm missing, we have so many people. I am clicking through this, of course. Oh yes, I see Jonathan Westbrook is in here as well. So we want to make sure that we have an opportunity to speak with him tonight. And we see that there are so many members who have come out here, and that's one thing that I would like for you to do. If you have the opportunity on your page right here, what you want to do is take a look at all of the people who are here, because while it's Black History Month, and while we are discussing these things in the historical and present and in the future context, we know that we don't worship the paint job, we worship the manufacturer. And because of all of the goodness that God has blessed us with, that we bring to this particular table, to this particular fight, to the endeavors like we see with this mural, we can make not only our party stronger, but our community and our nation stronger. So that's one of the big themes that I want you to have and take away from here tonight if you have to leave us a little early. But with that said, let's get into the present piece. And if we could have Mr. Young, Rashard, would you like to give a little rundown and synopsis of where do you see the current state of Black Republicans in context to the party? And maybe even differentiate between Black Republicans and Black conservatives. How do you see that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's a growing number, right? And it's funny, I have this discussion with my family and friends all the time. It's, it's like a Black Republican, oh my God, it's like, a big deal. It's like, nah, when you learn the history, this is inherently who we are, who we were. And there's a lot of folks out there who do share those values, growing up in a Christian home, church on Sunday, church on Wednesday. Dad used to say, hey, you don't work, you don't eat. And just, as I look back over my life, the values that I have, they line up well. And, it took a lot of history to kind of get me to that point. But what you're seeing today is you're seeing folks coming out and they're saying, hey, like my allegiance is not necessarily to a party, it's to God and it's to our values. And I have to vote my values in the best way possible. And so those for me have begun to lean obviously towards the conservative realm of things. So, the party today is shaping. It's starting to look completely different. I had this conversation with Chairman Mike Kuckelman. For many years, the left, for many years, opposition has done a really good job, unfortunately, of branding and marketing who the GOP is, right? Before and today, it's still that way in some ways, the great white patriarchal structure and things like that. And I think folks are kind of waking up. The left is showing their true colors in a lot of ways. I think the African-American community is starting to realize, hey, you've had 60 plus years, you've had X amount of years to make a difference, to make a change and do some things. And we're not seeing a result. And so I think the Republican Party is beginning to step up, right? From a way of policy, from the way of voice and how we reach the Black community and African-American community and minority communities. And so I think we're headed in a really good direction. I think there's some things we really have to tighten up as far as the way we brand ourselves. It's the party is definitely expanding as folks begin to learn, hey, we do share the same values. It's just kind of seeing through the fog and having someone help you, educate you and get you to that point.
Absolutely. I think that you've hit a number of nails right on the head with that rundown. And when you talk about the branding piece and we look at the marketing, one of the big pieces that we've seen that the left has been really good at is getting out their message, getting into that mental space of what their brand is, right? And the question is, how do we change that here with the GOP and our in-reach and outreach, both into the GOP in particular, and maybe into the communities at large. That's something else that I'd like to explore here tonight. But Before I have that opportunity to answer that question, I just wanted to see if Mr. Jonathan Westbrook, if you're online and willing to speak, I wanted to give you an opportunity to chime in. I know we've had some conversations offline about these very topics, and I would love to have you add to that.
Sorry, I just got unmuted. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak. I'm sorry for not being able to go visual with you all. Good evening.
Good evening.
So I think one of the things that we could definitely take away from the previous administration is the boldness in regards to how we brand ourselves, and being deliberate and tactful in regards to our message, our policies, and how they positively affect those in the urban core, as far as those, and as well as those in the rural communities. And so I think the Republicans need to do a deep dive into how we do our outreach. Let's break the stereotype of this white wealthy community, and it's a community that actually engages into tearing down the prison pipeline, the education system, and how we educate our youth, both black and white, and how we incarcerate folks. The previous administration did an amazing job in regards to like releasing a lot of people that have been given harsh sentences, and I thank God for that as a police officer in Kansas City, Kansas, and also now working in Washington, D.C. for the year. I've seen these things firsthand, and these are stories that we need to begin to relate to our folks back in our communities in regards to, hey, these things are working, these things benefit a lot of people. And so we definitely have to do a better job in regards to our messaging and our branding and how we relate to folks around us. And so moving forward, I think we need to really focus on that, and those one-on-one conversations with our neighbors. When we have our Republican meetings in our local communities, how do we better relate to our folks, and how can we storytell and people feel us? Because the Democrats have done an amazing job doing this, and we've not done the best job. We can do better. And so I think moving forward, even in the last 6 weeks, I believe now, 4 or 5 weeks now that we've seen this administration in office, people are already suffering. And so how do we now relay our policies and make them hit home with people? So we've got a lot of work ahead of us, but I do believe that we're doing God's work. Our values, our morals are standing on God's word, and we need to do a better job of relaying that information to our communities in the state.
Yeah, and gentlemen, I appreciate both of you, and Mr. Treatha, you can chime in here too. I want to throw in one quick piece because I have over here in the chat, gentleman has asked the question, having been in the legislature for over a month now, what are the difference in issues of importance to people of color from population centers versus rural communities? And I'm going to answer that in a fashion that ties into what we're discussing right here, right now. Part of the thing from being 20 years in the military, I understand, and many of you who have served understand something that we call flagpole operations. Wherever the general is on the battlefield, the standard or the flag goes with that general. And that signifies the most important space on the battlefield. It is the decision point. It is the command center. Is usually where the most fur is flying, and it requires the attention of the commander. And that's why we are so overjoyed here tonight to have Chairman Kuckelman host this for us with Shannon Golden. We are overjoyed at this opportunity because this shows you the importance of that battlefield command, that flagpole operation. It is of importance and it requires that attention. That's one of the big pieces that we're getting into. But when we think about how is it that we as Republicans, black, white, and different, how is it that we move inside of our communities? We know that the left has this choice of policies that lead to a pipeline to prison, right? Through one size fit all type of educational opportunities, social welfare across the board, absolutely no personal responsibility for any of your actions or the repercussions thereof. We understand that all these things come together, and that's the thing that we spend all of our time fighting against. But what we want to do is get into that space where we create, instead of a pipeline to prison, we want to create a pathway to promise. And I believe wholeheartedly that starts out with some of the things, and this goes to your question, Mr. Pruitt, there's not much difference between the rural communities, as I found up here, and the urban or the population centers. A lot of the people are really concerned about mainly three things. I would say five, but mainly three. And to get to that pathway to promise, you step on all three of these steps. Number one is education, educational freedom, educational choice. It wasn't too long ago that in the Black community, we were vying for the opportunity to have the lottery to get our kids educated more properly, because we saw what was happening in the public school sector. If you have that choice of and that freedom for education, you can use that as a stepping stone to beget employment opportunities. So one of the big things that I ran on, and that many of you support, I know that we have business leaders on this line as well, is the abundance of setting of jobs, number one, but also setting the economic landscape conducive to getting employment, hiring folk, giving them an option other than being on the public dole. The next step in that, once you have your education, your employment, you can have that opportunity now that you've built your Rolodex, now that you've experienced a few things, to have economic development, build your own business, build up your own communities. That is something that I just can't even begin to tell you how inspiring it is and how liberating it is to have something of your own that you've worked for, and just have that pride of ownership, whether it be your first house, your first car, or your first pair of shoes. So when we talk about, getting into the community, whether it be the rural, if they have farms and those are basically small businesses that they're trying to hand down through generations, or even if you're in the urban population centers, when we're talking about the whole gamut of reforms, whether it be reforms in the legal system, in the judicial system, when we're talking about reforms in the economic opportunities sector, all of these things go hand in hand with conservatism and our Christian principles, where we have an eternal victorhood mentality instead of a victimhood mentality, and we rely on that traditional faith and family values. So to answer that question, that's one of the things when we talk about the branding. Let me turn the discussion to that future piece right now. What would be some actionable steps that you all, the panelists, would ideally have? And if you want to chime in on the chat function as well, I'll bring it up. When we are talking about how to move into the next phase, what would be some of the things that you'd like to see to help us get there? Ms. Treatha, I'll turn it over to you.
Some of the things that I would like to see, especially with some of our elected officials and community leaders, Representative Penn, I would like to see schools of choice, for our Black kids, other than, like you had stated, public schools is just not doing it. If they had some competition and school of choice, I think it'll be much better. And I think that before they had the what was it, Common Core or whatever, one size fit all.
Yes, ma'am.
that need to be repealed or whatever. The other thing is I like to see us when you say about the justice reform, which I think that the past administration was working on that to release and create job opportunities for nonviolent offenders who have been, affected by the Jim Crow Democrats 1996 crime bill.
Wasn't that Joe Biden's signature series bill?
Yeah.
Hey.
And I like, of course, pro-life. Let's get into our community, because most of us is Black churches are conservative. Let's get in there. Let's save our Black babies. Those are some of the things I like to see, create more jobs for Blacks to lift them out of poverty. And one of the things that I did like about our Senator Tim Scott, that the opportunity bill that he had put forth. Of course, the COVID kind of put a stop to it, but that was something that was very important to starting Black businesses up and helping them invest in that, you know. And
Yes,
so
ma'am.
those are some of the things. Those are some of the things that I have.
Yes, ma'am. So we talk about the judicial or the justice reform. We talk about economic opportunity zones, building that to scale, even here is in the state and maybe down to the county or city level, municipality level. And we talk about the educational freedom and educational choice, where I homeschool two of my kids, my two eldest, and my middle daughter, she goes to private school, because I'm a firm believer that you can't send them out to Caesar every day and expect and anything less than a Roman to come home at night. And I have to do all of the reprogramming. I think some of you have heard me say that before. But when we're looking at that, Rashard, just wanted to ping in on you. When you talk about relationship building and communication, can you elaborate on that? Where do you think something actionable that we can make happen here in the next quarter or calendar year, or any of our major events? What would you like to see happening there?
Absolutely. I'll give a little bit of context too. I mean, like, growing up KCMO, growing up, you go from projects to moving to, Raymore Peculiar, see my first cow for the first time. Then you move to, Kansas, and I've built such a life here, but I've learned the importance of integration, right? At my church, it took one couple, invite me over, ask me to sit down, have a meal. I begin to understand more of their values and where they come from. But my point is, as the GOP, we can't be afraid to integrate, right? We can't be afraid to go into urban Wichita, go into Wyandotte. Hey, even if it's the GOP, we throw an annual block party, right? And we go, and that's a better way of sharing your values, right? Than barking at each other over Facebook, or asking the questions, why don't Black people do, why don't Black people do that? And I think that's where, the Black Council here and the GOP can team up and work together. We go into these places. Kevin Yoder on the campaign trail went up to Wyandotte, stood before a church, an African-American church. And it was just incredible to see his courage and how they received him once he was there and in front of them. The general, my boss, he does it very well. He's not afraid to go into these places and go into these areas. But we have to be a bridge for that. And we have to be able to create that and go out and encourage others. And so the future of the Republican Party is all up to our work. We can sit back and we can watch the left use culture, use Hollywood, use music, use entertainment to paint a picture of who we are, or we're going to have to go out, right? We're going to have to integrate. We're going to have to engage and interact with the minority communities in order to gain that trust and win that vote. I think the policies speak for themselves, but there's a lot of rhetoric, right, that you got to cut through, and you can't blame the average American for getting lost in all of it. So that's our job. That's our duty moving forward, is just to engage in every opportunity we get.
And I'll chime in on that. Is Mr. Treatha?
Yeah, I kind of want to piggyback on that.
Yes, please do.
Very important. That's a very important point. Our registered deeds here in Wichita, it used to be the Black Ministerial League, but now it's the Greater Wichita Ministerial League. And I had her come and speak. There's a lot of Black leaders and the Black ministers. And once she spoke to them, she did I don't know what she called it. Bill, my husband, Bill, he's a Vietnam vet. What you call that, 1099, or what you call that? What do you call that? They did discharge paper.
DD 214.
Yes, that's it. They did that, and let me tell you, the reception that she got from them, because a lot of them was veterans. A lot of those Black ministers and Black attendees there at the Black Ministerial League were veterans. And I mean, they just loved her, and knowing they did not know that they could do that at the Register of Deeds office. I mean, quick, fast, and in a hurry, other than going to the VA. They invited her back again. Another thing was the Wichita Independent Neighborhood, where there's about 190 homeowners associations and neighborhood associations. She came and spoke there. And this is getting into the Black community, and they just loved her because how she presenters, of course, all Republicans to me is better than any Democrat. You didn't hear that, but that's what I'm. And it was just great. So some of these things that you can invite them in. We have to, as Black Republicans, help to invite them in and introduce them. But they have to be willing to come in. The Black community is not the Democrat community. And they've got to think that way and get out of their comfort zone and come in, So that's what we're building on here in Wichita. Now we'll be visiting and sitting down with the vice chair. We also partner with our fourth district chair, Sedgwick County, Republican Party. We partner with Packard, all the Republican organizations here. We kind of stick together and partner together. So I will be sitting down with the vice chair of Sedgwick County Party and getting the Republicans into the Black community.
Amen. And let me ask you one thing here, Mr. Westbrook, if you're still with us. When we're looking at and talking about the relationship building and the opportunities to brush up against our brothers and sisters all across the GOP, what would you think of an opportunity like at the state convention, or even on a quarterly fashion here over Zoom, as long as we have COVID and we can't get together, extending this type of discussion so that we can hear back from folks in the community? Because there are some great questions that I'm about to ask you guys, and y'all keep them rolling in. Go ahead and type away because we're about to go into our Q&A session very quickly here. But just for Mr. Westbrook, what would you like to see? Are there any ideas that you have in that regard that could help facilitate more of the discussion, the relationship?
Yes, I think Mr. Young hit the nail on the head in regards to just the relationship building that he experienced in regards to having a welcoming arm. I think that for most African Americans, especially coming out of Wyandotte County myself, one of only a few Republicans in the county that are willing to speak up and speak out, we're seeking open arms, and we're fighting against the rhetoric that the media shows us and tells us in our particular counties, again, that Republicans are this or that. And if we appeal to the values and the morals of the party itself, and seeing how these morals and values have lined up historically with African American values since day one. And if we look, not to go back into the history, but again, the Republican Party has always been a party that has supported the African American community. And so at these times we all come together, I would just reiterate to everyone, not just Blacks, whites, Hispanics, what have you, to be a party that's welcoming to all individuals, and again, just being warm and welcoming. I've heard from others, and including myself, at times where we've come to these celebrations of our party and moving forward, and at times they felt kind of an outcast, and that's not something that I believe that anyone intends to do, but that tends to be the effect of maybe a lot of folks coming together. So I would say, again, first working, whether it be in your church, in your community, whether it be through social media, what have you, being warm and welcoming to those that are seeking, again, because there is a difference between conservatives and Republicans. I mean, we can identify with conservatives who identify with our values and our morals, but still yet won't vote Republican because of of the stereotypes. And so again, we need to learn how to and work on being a welcoming party to our African Americans, our minorities across the state. I think once we nail that down, we're going to see greater numbers coming into the party.
I agree. And I think the other side of that coin is we as Black Americans, as Black conservatives, as Black GOP members need to be just as welcoming and not standoffish. I think that I've heard from some that they don't know how to interact. It always seems like there's a landmine that they're stepping on whenever they ask a question because of all the fraction and fraught that we have in our history. I think a lot more charity both ways and due consideration can go a long way. I would welcome the opportunity to continue this conversation in any form, at any time, in any place with anyone. But that said, let's continue the conversation with a few of the questions that we're getting here, because we're running down on time. And from about 7:40 until 8 o'clock, we wanted to have a little Q&A. And this question is from Joe. He asked the question in the chat room: where or what caused the happening or the situation that was key for Black Americans to deviate from the Republican Party? Who would like to jump on that one?
I can get it.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Young.
Absolutely. Well, there was a piece and there was a part of history where Abraham Lincoln was taken out, and I believe it was Andrew Johnson was put in. Hopefully I'm not getting that wrong, but there was a big mistrust at that point. A lot of things were overturned from a legislative standpoint, all the good that Abraham Lincoln had done, as you know, he acted as a abolitionist. You know, you got John Brown, guys like those who slavery wouldn't have ended, and the Civil War wouldn't have started if it wasn't for those guys and for those key players. And so we need those type of Republicans in seats, ones that are true advocates, have true hearts, that break for the state of the nation, that seek inequality and goes after it, and not afraid to tackle it. So I just deviated from your question, but I think what's really important is—
That's okay. You ran for office. We know how it goes.
There's been a big mistrust, right? And hey, a large percentage of it is drummed up by media. Again, like I said, the leftists got culture by the grip, by the neck. And it's hard to fight back against ideological weapons that you can't see, right? Only thing you believe and know is what you see. Jordan Peterson calls them ideologues, right? You only believe what you've been told, and we're not integrating the specifics of our own experience, right? So it's hard to combat some of those things. So there's been a large piece of this mistrust, rightfully so. And then there's been another piece that we just haven't been able to combat. And so I think for the African-American community, again, there's a big wake up happening. Folks are saying, okay, look, why is Flint, Michigan looking the way it is? Why is Southside Chicago looking the way it is? You know, no knock on downtown Kansas City, but why are certain areas of downtown Kansas City the way they is? And who's been in power and leadership for decades in those areas? And so obviously, you know, folks are waking up and saying, okay, obviously there's a policy issue and there's a rhetoric and there's a narrative issue. And so it goes back to the point of, you can sound very good and you can appease a people group. You can jump up and you can tickle their ears, but what are you doing for them from a policy standpoint? And so I think when we talk about rebranding, right, there's a certain way you speak to the African-American community. There's a certain way you speak to minority communities, right? It's called emotional intelligence. And I think as the Republican Party, we're learning what we can do and what we can't do. But most importantly, it's not about the rhetoric, it's about what you do, but it's also about how you approach those people groups and understanding them. So yes, there has been a point to his question of mistrust. Part of it is not our fault. Some of it is. But the reality of it is we've got to figure it out. Rebranding doesn't mean you check your values at the door. It simply means you regroup, you assess how you appeal, and you move forward.
And thank you for that. That's spot on. When we talk about the rebranding aspect, how do we make it more appealing, and how you speak one way or another? The top down, you have a problem, I have the answer. I'm going to tell you what your problem is, and I'm going to tell you what your solution is. Probably doesn't fly very well with any of us. I can't imagine. None of my kids, they operate like that. So I get a lot of pushback too. But that said, I did have a question in here from Miss Julie Adams. And I think it goes on with what you were just talking about, Rashard. How do we as Christians who believe in Christian values like pro-life, one man, one woman marriage, etc., get Black Christians to vote their Christian values instead of, as they always have done, as Democrats? And let's see, I'll have Mr. Westbrook take a bite at that one. Jonathan, you still with us, buddy?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm finally getting settled. I was mobile for a minute. So yeah, I mean, these are things that, again, that have been built around the African American culture for years, and these are things that we have celebrated, have honored throughout time. And so I think it goes back to the art of storytelling. I mean, I think the other party has mastered this art, and this is something that we have to work on. And again, when we look at the almost diabolical and sinister methods that have been imputed into the African American community in regards to abortion, when we see the direct attacks on marriage, time and time again, these are issues that are talked behind closed doors, and almost that silent majority that we saw with the previous administration. These are things that most African Americans believe in. Our values and morals, again, are things that we genuinely do believe in. It's just, how do we revive this desire to pursue these things? And again, that's something that is upon us, and not just white Republicans, but also African Americans. And this is a two-way street. And so I think the Republican Party is going down the right path, but we have to also alter our path a little bit to address the issues and the attacks that we're facing against our morals and our values as a country. And so again, I would say mastering the art of storytelling and making sure that we're diving into those things that really grab our hearts. Again, the issue of life and the issue of marriage, these are things that we genuinely do value. And how do we bring these things to the forefront outside of culture? Because again, culture is, selling us one thing, a total 180 outside of what we believe in as a whole. And so if you know anything about African American culture, we do believe in family, a mother and a father marrying and having children, going to work and providing for ourselves. And so again, these are the roots of our culture. And so again, I say the art of storytelling is imperative in regards to just that connecting with one another. And so I would just encourage not only African Americans, but those outside of that culture group to, reach out again in your churches and your communities. And when you have the opportunity to speak with someone, just be honest, be real, be forthright in regards to how you feel. And I believe that God will use you and will speak through you, and the connection will be made, and that seed will be sowed, and the Holy Spirit will definitely water that seed. And you may not see it right away, but just know that seed has been sown, and it will eventually bear the fruit that we're looking for.
And I agree with that completely. I think another big piece of that is making sure that you have that, as I said before, that safe space, that someone who might have a question feels welcome, that they can come and ask that question without any judgment or anything like that. And you can help storytell to them to enlist their support and basically, adapt them into helping you propagate that story. Inside of, like Ms. Treatha Brown was talking about, the Kansas Black Republican Council has, each of the counties has their own version, subsidiaries. Look out for those individuals who you can identify who might want to be a part of that organization and who have those skills and can help, because I meet them all the time. Not everyone is politically active, but I meet plenty of people who are fiscal or business conservatives, policy-wise, and those who are social conservatives because of the Christian values or the family values and the traditional family values. Either way, we need to be willing and hungry to get out there and find and identify those individuals and bring them into the fold, because they are there. And if you ever have any questions about how to make that happen, this panel has some excellent people on it who have been in it for quite a while and seen it from the ground up, Treatha and Ms. Kenya Cox, as well as some of the young lines like Rashard and Jonathan Westbrook. So I think that will go a long way. Before I turn back to one of you gentlemen here, I want to ask Ms. Treatha one quick question. Ms. Treatha, in your experience, the question is coming from Tanner Temple, and it says, how do we as a party create a more prominent and attractive culture to attract those in the African-American community that are currently independents or Democrats, to give the Republican Party itself a deeper look and see what we have to offer? Now, I'm thinking that in your circles that you've run in, you know of a few Democrats and a few independents, and you've persuaded many of them to come to the Republican side of the aisle. So could you let us know what your secret sauce is?
You better believe it. Number one, what you have to do, Representative Penn, is make sure that you're active in the community, that you are doing things that the Black community cares about, and that you're a leader there. Now, the majority of the time, and Kenya can vouch for this, our chairman now, Joseph L. Moore, and probably you too can probably vouch for this. When we sit at the table, we're looking mostly at Democrats. What we have to do, we have to outdo them. We have to sit on board. As you've heard, you have to make sure that you are a leader, your integrity is high, and that you are doing what the community needs and what the community wants. I sit in on the, I did the sickle cell, Ashley and Brown in my niece's name, scholarship fund, because 1 out of 500 African American have the sickle cell disease. You know all about that. I made sure that I got proclamations from the county and from the city, invited all our elected officials, all the community leaders, the Black community leaders, the ones that wasn't just everyday church folk, everyday community people, to make sure that they were there, and that I spearheaded that along with the Republicans. When I did the community meeting with the law enforcement agency, which we have great law enforcement, and everybody on this line I know in Frederick County would vouch for me with this, Patrick, Chief of Police Gordon Ramsey is the best. Our sheriff, Jeff Easter, and our district attorney, Mark Bennett. Mark Bennett spearheaded, the criminal justice. He was chair of the criminal justice reform, for a while there in the state of Kansas. I don't know whether he still is, but what they did, let me tell you what they did. And I was right there with them. They hosted for the Black community, Mark Bennett, our district attorney, Jeff Easter, Frederick County Sheriff, Gordon Ramsey, Wichita Chief of Police, at Wichita State University Metroplex, a community meeting for the Black community, and asked them. They didn't tell them what did need to be done. They asked them, what are the needs? What are some of your concerns about the criminal justice, about your interaction with the law enforcement? We want to do something about that. Let's do some. That's why you haven't had any problems here as far as what some of the other major cities have had. You haven't had that here in Wichita. Have you noticed that? Or even in the state of Kansas. That's one of the reasons why. The Kansas African American Affairs Commission, which Kenya Cox is the executive director, chaired a seminar with our law enforcement. And so we are constantly the community police. So this is some of the things that you need to do that people see you do. Let's see here, for the, I don't know whether I can even see this or not, but here's my face, here's my picture. Can you see me? Can you see me, y'all? Breast cancer. This is for, can you see that?
I can see that. Look at you.
On the magazine for our level one, Dear Christy, extension, Dear Christy, I'm talking to the Black community about breast cancer. For the American Heart Association, I was the poster child for them. You got to get into the community and do things to make sure to make sure that they respect you and that you are a leader and that you're doing things that they like, and that way they come to you. So when I wanted our registered deeds to be a keynote speaker at the Ministerial League, oh yeah, Treatha, absolutely. So I just registered myself, and there she was. So
Yes,
you
ma'am.
get this respect, credibility, I guess you might say.
Yes,
Patrick.
ma'am. And Ms. Treatha, thank you for saying that. That goes back to a common saying that we probably all know. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So going back to that concept before of flagpole operations, showing up and doing those acts of service speaks volumes. It reveals what your character is. It reveals your motivation. And just like in politics, as I was advised starting here in my first run by so many who wrapped their arms around me with their mentorship, shoe leather, shoe leather, shoe leather, sweat equity. You have got to get out there and show that you want it, and people have to see that you want it by the effort that you push out there. I think that Mr. Rashard, I wanted to come back to you with one other quick question because I don't want to. I got the green light for about 1 more minute here, so please watch out for the time because I want to be respectful of people's time. Ms. Helen Van Etten says that Trump won 8% of the African-American vote, 2% increase from 2016. Need to keep reaching out on a personal level. Reaching out in African-American churches is very critical. I agree with that. And I think a big piece of it has to do with results to answer those questions. What the Black society is looking for, whether or not they recognize it, are results. It's even more than just giving them what they want. It's also giving them what they need in accordance with your principles. And I believe that the principles of conservatism lead us to that space for the things that buoy and bring along and bring up the Black community just as much. And once they identify it, that is tethered to conservatism, to the proponents of conservatism, i.e. the Republican Party, that's how we can grab more in there. But, and Rashard, I'm about to stretch your brain a little bit. 1619 project, give me 15 seconds to explain it and 45 seconds to say, how do you refute it? Go.
I tell you what, that project is becoming a big issue. The New York Times did a piece on it. I'll say this without getting too far in the weeds. These perspectives that, you know, there's a book out there called White Fragility and all these things. And these are coming from folks on the liberal side that are writing about African-American experiences that have really no idea what they're really about. And so I think what we are fighting against right now is the voice, right? We have people speaking on behalf of the Black community that don't carry the Judeo-Christian Black values, right, in the Black community. And that's one of the struggles. And so when you talk about the 1916 project, folks they like to rewrite history, right? And they like to try to make Martin Luther King Jr. seem like he didn't have those values. And they try to uplift, you know, guys like James Baldwin's voice. And there's a difference between all of those African-American men in that time period. You know, I'll say this before I close. It goes back to what Westbrook was saying. Judeo-Christian values is the only type of Republican and conservative our ancestors were. And it's the only type of Republican I want to be, right? There's values that we will not bend on, we will not break on. And as long as, you know, our counterparts are pushing those narratives, they're going to be destructive to our communities. Now, I'll say this, in the African-American community, we have family business that we got to take care of, right? You know, the family structure. If Republicans don't continue to support policies that help families and you know, if these policies are worshiping big corporations and bailing out big corporations, but not bailing out the people, you know, there's a kind of a disconnect there, cognitive dissonance. And so we've got to be consistent with our ideology. We've got to support life. You know, every day in New York, more African-American babies die than they are born. 70–80% of abortion clinics are in African-American neighborhoods. 22 million, you know, since Planned Parenthood was started by Margaret, who actually said she was really into eugenics, weird. So, you know, in order to get, we're producing on policy-wise to the Black community. It's our message, it's how we engage them, it's how we reach them. But super grateful for this dialogue. I want to thank Kim Borchers. We had a conversation about this whole thing that we're doing now, and she got on it. I want to thank Shannon. She's been all in for the GOP, Mike Huckelman. I feel like they don't get enough credit for all the sacrifices and hard work that they put into keeping the state party here. The future, I see us being a big state party. You know, I see us being a strong one. We have the heart of a Texas state party or any other state. But I think it's going to take all of us to get there. And so this is a conversation that's not an annual one, but it will be a quarterly one. And you will hear, you know, the panel's commitment, and you will see the panel's commitment and execution on the things that we're talking about. So thank you so much. I know we're strapped for time, so I'll be quiet.
Oh, no, it's never a problem. And I echo those sentiments as well. Thank you so very much to Ms. Treatha Brown-Foster for coming here tonight and sharing with us all of her background and thoughts. You are just a treasure, and we appreciate everything that you bring to the table, ma'am. Thank you to Mr. Young for, you know, not only regaling us with all of his insights, but also helping us understand what's the way ahead. What does it look like? And thank you to Mr. Westbrook for stepping into the fire ad hoc as though it were. Your insights were just phenomenal as well. The chat room is full of a lot of people who are reaching out and saying, hey, this is what we need to hear. So in that vein, I would ask and request if, Mr. Chairman, if we could run this again on a quarterly fashion or whatever you deem necessary. I think this is a conversation that we need to continue even into the state convention, and have a panel maybe at the state convention. That would be a request that I'd be willing to talk with you about, because I will say this last thing. We have a lot of votes left on the table. And President Trump did a magnificent job. Some of you were delegates to the national convention, and you saw for 4 nights how he put Black Americans up in prominence and showed how the GOP has their best interest in mind, but also produces results. It's not rhetoric. And in that same vein, we should capture that and continue to ride that wave and promulgate that. That would be something that we're definitely interested in talking about how to do and how to make it actionable so that we can actually have verifiable results and get to some of the solutions that we want as a party and as a state in our communities. That said, I also see that Bishop Wade Moore chimed in here as well. Welcome, Bishop Moore. You're a champion in this work as well. But that said, thank you to Shannon Golden for setting this all up, organizing it. As usual, impeccable job. Ms. Borchers and Ms. Van Atten, thank you both for showing up here tonight and chiming in as well. Mr. Dool, and with that, Chairman Kokelman, I turn it back over to you. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you, Representative Penn, for leading this discussion tonight. I have been receiving lots of positive comments about it. I just want to mention a couple of things. One, I did see in the comments, Rita Knoll was asking if this discussion could be had with other Republican groups. So if anybody needs help connecting with Rita Knoll to make sure that happens, let me know and I'll put you in contact, or maybe you already have her contact details. But I know that Rita wants to get you this kind of a discussion going with other Republican groups. So we'd like to follow up on that. And second, for your request for the state party, you know, as I've discussed with you and Rashard both recently, the state party is dedicated to building our tent. We need all Republicans. We need every person who supports the principles of the Republican Party, who supports our platform. We need every person. And so I'm committed to helping any way I can. I need advice and guidance from you and others on how we can do that. But I assure you that we are fully in support. With that, I'd like to thank you, Representative Penn, again, and also Treatha Brown-Foster, Rashard Young, and Jonathan Westbrook. This has been a very beneficial night, a great discussion to have. If we could give them a virtual round of applause. We appreciate you very much taking the time to do this. And in closing, I just have 2 announcements. One, please remember that the state convention is coming up in April in Manhattan. Please go get registered for that. Get your hotel room. We were advised today that the host hotel is now sold out, but that's not a problem because right next door is another hotel, the Fairfield Inn. It shares a parking lot. And the weather will be good in April, but please don't wait any longer. If you haven't registered, get registered and get a hotel room because you don't want to be Ubering back and forth from a distant hotel. Right now we got plenty of rooms. And then the last thing I'd like to leave you all with is a bit of really good news. I would like to give a shout out to our executive director, Shannon Golden. We were just notified by the RNC that the Kansas Republican Party has been determined by the RNC to be one of the top 5 most engaged state parties in our country. Great job, Shannon. Thank you. And with that, I'll bid you all farewell. Look forward to seeing you in April. And of course, I look forward to working with all of you, obviously between now and then. So thank you and have a great evening.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good night.
Thank you all. Thank you all. Good evening.